Hey everyone, this is Tanya Reed with Read, Run, Study. I've already kind of wrapped up my BookTubeAthon experience in a blog post, but I decided in the spirit of the BookTubeAthon to go ahead and make a wrap-up video as well, now that I have a little bit more time. So let's get started with the books that I read, and then I will discuss the challenges that I completed or didn't complete. The first book I read was Mouse by Art Spiegelman. This was my first experience with a graphic novel, so that was kind of interesting. And it was also, I was reading it on an airplane, which that can be kind of a hit or miss experience in and of itself. And I have to say I was really pleasantly surprised. For as much hype as this had, I was afraid it was just going to fall really flat for me, but I really enjoyed it. I really liked the way that Art Spiegelman portrayed his relationship with his father, because it reminded me a lot of my own grandparents who grew up during World War II in Germany. They don't really like to talk about their experience a whole lot, but I saw a lot of them in Art Spiegelman's father, especially his tendency to not want to spend money and to want to conserve food and things like that, even though he's no longer in the war at the time of the writing of this story. But it was definitely a very good story, and I was really upset that I had only brought this first book with me on the plane, so I didn't actually get to start the next one until I got back from my work trip. So the next book that I read was actually Bridge to Terabithia, because this was one of the books that I had brought with me on my trip. I started reading this on the plane ride home, and that was, the whole experience of getting home was miserable due to lots of issues with flight cancellations and things due to weather. So I didn't get all the way through this because we spent a lot of time dealing with trying to get a new flight and all of that. But it didn't quite live up to my previous experience with it. I last read it as a kid, and I just remember it being really, really powerful and moving. One of those stories that really sticks with you. And this time, it didn't really do that. I don't really know why. I think part of it was that I was really tired, but it is a kid's book, and it's a lot simpler, I guess, than I remember it being. I think my childhood imagination added a lot of things to it that the book doesn't really do as well as I remember it. So I still liked it, but it wasn't as fantastic as I remember it being. So I would recommend reading this, but I would definitely recommend reading this for children. If you have children in your life, do recognize that there is a big theme of death in this book, but it's also very much about friendship and strength, and it is a good story, just not quite as amazing as I remember it being. When I got home, I went ahead and watched the movie Bridge to Terabithia, and this was amazing. This was exactly what I remember the book being as a kid, and it had all the elements that I felt like the book just didn't have this time. It was powerful, I cried, happy tears, sad tears, everything. It was really just great, and the actors and actresses in this were fantastic. They did a really good job with the casting. Josh Hutcherson played the Jesse, and he did a really, really good job playing Jesse. Anna Sophia Robb played Leslie, and she was fantastic as Leslie. And I had forgotten, actually, that Zooey Deschanel plays the teacher, but she is perfect for the teacher. Like, really, all of the casting was exactly what it needed to be a great movie. My only complaint about the movie is actually the movie trailer, which makes this look like a Narnia-type story. It's not. It's, like, not at all Narnia. Like, Terabithia is in their imaginations, and they call attention to the fact that it's just their imagination, but that your imagination is part of your strength. So I think the movie makers failed a little bit at advertising the movie correctly, but still a really great movie as long as you know what you're getting into with it. And then I was finally able to pick up the second Mouse book. A lot of people say that this is their favorite of the two. I actually think I kind of preferred the first one. This one, I liked it. Like, I really liked it a lot. I think I gave it like 4 stars. But it wasn't as amazing to me as the first one. I don't know why. I can't even really explain what it was that I felt was missing. The relationship was still described very well. I think I was just more interested in in general, I'm more interested in kind of the way the Holocaust started than I am interested in how people, like, survived at the end. Because really, this showed that a lot of the end survival was just luck, I guess. But I've always been sort of morbidly fascinated with how something as horrible as the Holocaust can start. And the first book deals a lot more with the early years of the war and how some of these things just came about. Yeah, that's about all I can really say about this. Definitely a series that I would recommend to pretty much everyone. They're really fast. I think each of them took me a couple of hours to read, so definitely recommend them. I will probably be purchasing copies for myself to reread in the future. The last book that I managed to read during the BookTubeAthon was Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None. This was originally part of my possible TBR, but I wasn't planning on reading it until one of my friends came over after I got back from my trip and looked at a stack of books that I had, which this was in it, and insisted that I should read it. So I decided that this was a good option to go ahead and knock out part of that challenge, as well as being a genre I hadn't read before, or don't read a lot of, as it's a mystery thriller type book. I still honestly don't know how I feel about this book. I really liked parts of it, and then I felt kind of weirdly underwhelmed with other parts of it. And I don't know, the wrap up at the end was kind of odd, so I'm still sort of ruminating on how I actually feel about it. I think I gave it 4 stars, and it's probably somewhere in that range for me. Something that I did really like, but I don't know if I liked it enough to like reread it or not. Definitely an interesting story though, and a quick read. I read it entirely on one day. It's not all that long. So this was the small stack of books and movies that I read during the BookTubeAthon. The first challenge that I managed to complete was the Read a Entire Series, which consisted of Mouse 1 and Mouse 2. Also, these worked for Read a Book with Pictures. The third challenge that I completed was to read a book-to-movie adaptation and to watch the movie. And this also counted for the Read a Book with red on the cover. The final book counted for the Read a Book in a genre you don't normally read, as well as read a book that someone else picked out for you. Unfortunately, I only read 4 books and watched 1 movie. So I did not complete the read 7 books or 2,100 pages challenge. However, I completed all of the other challenges, which I think is pretty impressive considering I read less than 1,000 pages and only spent about 3 days actually reading due to work travels. So I am very happy with myself. I knocked some things out of my TBR, and I believe everything got at least 3 or 4 stars. So this was a pretty good reading week overall, and I definitely look forward to participating in the future.